Greetings. My name is Doug Rapley, and I'm here at College of Western Idaho performing an experiment that you can easily reproduce at home. This experiment is stolen from one of my favorite shows, the Late Show with David Letterman. It was called Will It Float? Always blew my mind because they would bring out random items and place them in large tubs of water and then determine would they float or would they not float. And this is something you could do at home with your own household items. And I've brought a few, and we can test them in this tub of water. However, you maybe don't have a tub of water at home. You can do this while doing the dishes with your children, possibly the bathtub while bathing, and or if you want to really go big, use the swimming pool in the backyard. Please hesitate from launching things into local lakes and streams because we already have enough things in them besides the fish. Items that we can determine, do they float or do they not float, are just things that you're using around the house. And what we're comparing is the ability for the water to do its job versus what the object is that's placed into the water. These variables are basically determined by density versus buoyancy. And Archimedes worked on this about 2,000 years ago and helped explain a lot of this, which allows for things like aircraft carriers to float in the ocean and carry planes for us. So any guesses from the crowd in the room? Will it float or will it sink? It's just a regular can of Coke.
Unopened?
Unopened can of Coke.
No.
Sink or float?
Sink. Float. Float.
We're 50-50'd. It looks like it wants to sink. Interesting. What makes that different than a can of Diet Coke? And will it sink or will it float?
Float. Let's say it's going to sink.
We're about 2/3 on float. And you'll notice that the Diet Coke will float. What allows for that to happen? I'll let you determine that at home. That will be for your own experiment. But while we're at it, let's think about other fun items. Baseballs, rubber bands. Who thinks the baseball will sink or will float?
Float. Float.
We've got a lot of votes for float. If you've ever played baseball and you've launched one into a pond, you know that a baseball will float. What about rubber bands? Mainly made of rubber, mainly bands, sink or float?
Sink.
We've got one sink. And you were right, it did sink. Okay, so I think you see the point of the whole experiment. But all that really does is explain density, the difference between the amount of stuff within the volume of those objects compared to the density of the water. If we would go ahead and take something like regular modeling clay, and if you have some of this laying around or you don't have it, you can get it from a local art and craft store. You will notice that when you place it in the water, it will not float. It will sink. However, being that it is modeling clay, you can actually change its ability to displace the amount of water that's beneath it. And this is where Archimedes comes into play and his differences between density and buoyancy. Now to turn it up another notch, because I can't help myself, while you're at home, if you decide to make a boat made of clay, try to attempt to see how many marbles or coins, pennies, paper clips, hairballs, whatever you have laying around, and determine how buoyant your boat may be. Either way, I hope you have a sink, a trash can, a bucket, a pool, something that you can perform this experiment at home with you and your friends.